The Donald Trump administration has officially called on Ukraine to stop striking Russia, as it interferes with American businesses that are still operating with Russians. As reported by Ukraine's ambassador to the US, Stefanishina, the Donald Trump administration has officially warned Ukraine not to strike targets on Russian territory if they could affect the economic interests of the United States. In particular, Donald Trump is demanding that Ukraine stop striking the oil sector of the Russian Federation. Such a warning was sent to Kiev from Washington after Ukraine attacked 2 tankers of Russia's shadow fleet in the Black Sea and also damaged the port in Novorossiysk. The arguments that this is how the Kremlin earns money for the war and that this needs to be fought against did not convince the Americans. But at this time, Eastern European countries began preparing to defend their energy facilities, as there are signals that Russia is preparing to launch strikes against Europe, and they allocated a fairly significant amount of money to protect the energy infrastructure. And now experts insist that Trump simply doesn't understand what Putin really wants from Ukraine, nor does he understand that simply giving up Donbass to Putin won't stop this war. My name is Alexei Peachy. Let's discuss this topic together, but before we start, let's go through a few things. Please subscribe to this channel, give it a like, leave any comment under this episode, and subscribe to my Telegram channel, Peachy News. The link is in the description of this video. There we publish breaking news as it comes in. So, the ambassador of Ukraine to the United States, Olha Stefanishina, stated that she received a démarche from the US State Department after the attacks by the armed forces of Ukraine on the oil terminal in Novorossiysk at the end of 2025. Next is her quote. "We heard that Ukrainian attacks on Novorossiysk affected some American investments that are carried out through Kazakhstan. And we heard from the State Department that we should refrain from attacking American interests." Well, that's diplomatic language, which means don't strike those targets anymore. According to Stefanishina, the State Department note also stated that the US currently has no diplomatic or economic interests in Ukraine, unlike in Kazakhstan. At the same time, Washington did not suggest refraining from attacks on other Russian energy infrastructure, Stefanishina emphasized, and she added that Kiev took note of this. Let me explain what this is about. The marine terminal of the Caspian Pipeline Consortium near Novorossiysk in the Black Sea was attacked by Ukrainian drones back in November of last year. The single-point mooring was damaged. Kazakhstan avoided an oil spill in the Black Sea. Loading was suspended and tankers were moved outside the port area. After the attack, oil exports were urgently redirected to alternative routes. And then the Ministry of Energy of Kazakhstan stated that what happened is an unacceptable incident and poses a threat to global energy security. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Kazakhstan added that attacks on the CPC, the Caspian Pipeline Consortium, damaged the bilateral relations between Astana and Kiev. In turn, the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs emphasized that Kiev's actions are in no way directed against Kazakhstan. They are acts of self-defense under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. Later, Ukraine carried out attacks on 2 tankers of Russia's shadow fleet, which are illegally transporting oil in the Black Sea. And that's when the Americans, as they say, ran out of patience. They said, "That's it, stop, please don't strike Novorossiysk, we're making money there. Yes, you have a war, but we're making money." I should note that the Caspian Pipeline Consortium is the largest route for transporting oil from the Caspian region to global markets, and it goes through the Russian city of Novorossiysk. So it turns out that this consortium is partially owned by American companies Chevron and Exxon, while Russia continues its war against Ukraine. By the way, Zelensky has repeatedly emphasized that strikes on Russian energy facilities and ports that finance the Kremlin's war are a form of sanctions for Ukraine. Such a shift in Washington's position, from unconditional political, diplomatic, and military support to a more neutral, I would even say pro-Russian stance, is concerning. In my opinion, this already crosses all boundaries when the Americans say, well, of course you can strike Russia, but don't hit the port in Novorossiysk because we have business there, we're making money, and you with your war. As the Financial Times writes, today Ukrainian officials are privately expressing frustration that the Trump administration is not reacting at all to Russian strikes on American businesses in Ukraine. But at the same time, they demand that Ukraine stop attacks on Novorossiysk. Well, for example, in June of last year, a Russian missile damaged the Boeing plant in Kiev. Silence. According to the American Chamber of Commerce, as of January this year, Russian shelling damaged 47% of American companies operating in Ukraine, almost 50%. Just think about that. Last Saturday, a Russian missile hit a production facility of the company Mondelez in northeastern Ukraine. This is one of the first major American investors after Ukraine gained independence, but Donald Trump is totally silent about this. So, the Russians are just destroying and bombing American businesses in Ukraine, and Trump is silent. When there was a strike on Novorossiysk, Trump said, "No, don't do that, our business is there." Meanwhile, Politico has published a truly sensational article. The deliberate destruction of Ukraine's energy infrastructure by Putin's army through regular massive airstrikes has forced countries bordering Russia to start protecting their own power plants and energy networks. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland have received 113 million euros from the European Union for new defensive measures, including physical barriers, troops, and cyber tools to protect critical infrastructure, signal jamming technologies to prevent attacks, drones, and emergency repair teams. The focus on the physical protection of infrastructure in countries on NATO's eastern flank is new and reflects a growing awareness that Russian aggression poses a real threat to it. In peacetime, protection is the responsibility of energy companies. In wartime, it becomes the responsibility of the Ministry of Defense. What we are seeing in Ukraine is the use of energy as a weapon. Well, as the publication writes, since last fall, Russia has been striking Ukraine's power plants, substations, and energy networks almost daily. In January alone, officially, 217 facilities were subjected to such attacks, involving more than 6,000 drones, 5,500 guided aerial bombs, and 158 missiles. In Kyiv, 1,126 apartment buildings were left without heating during the cold, and at the same time, more than 1.2 million people were left without electricity. In addition, power outages are also having a severe impact on industrial production. For Latvia, by the way, the seriousness of the threat became clear after the attack at the end of 2024 on the Estlink 2 underwater cable through which the Baltic countries receive electricity from Finland, which increased the cost of its import. It took Latvia about 6 months to find spare parts for a full repair, after which Latvia began to create a strategic reserve of components for the power system. Physical protection of the facilities was also strengthened. NATO naval forces are now patrolling Estlink 2, and Latvia and Lithuania have installed anti-drone systems at critical points of their power grids. Well, in the meantime, what is Washington doing? So Europe is saying, damn, I think things are about to go south, and Washington is telling Ukraine, please don't strike Russia because we have business interests there. Well, I don't know. It's kind of absurd. I'll just leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to like. Friends, if you found this episode interesting and useful, you can support the work of this YouTube channel financially through your donations or a paid subscription, by using the links and payment details in the description of this video and by scanning the QR code on your screens.